but this day is going to be a great ride, guys. So I think I'm all excited and I'm all messing up the whole view here. Anyway, once again, good evening and welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays. I'm your host and moderator, Carol. I'd like to introduce you to my panel. There's Soraya, Selvi, Kamini, Mazana, and Kyra. And today, I would like to take a moment actually to wish all our viewers in Sri Lanka a happy Vesak week, as Vesak falls tomorrow. So this is a time, I mean, we miss going out and celebrating Vesak. However, I think in our homes, this is a time for us to reflect and meditate and you know, spend some time with our family, enjoying this moment of Vesak. Today, our program is going to change subtly. We are going to have the first segment where everybody will have something to say on the panel. And then for the next two sessions, we are going to actually discuss what we spoke about. And we hope viewers will send us questions and any comments in the meantime on the chat. Today's topic is empowering women to believe it is possible. I'd like to start with a story of believing it was possible. Had a friend of mine ring the doorbell. This is about going back a few years, about 30 years. And she was very distraught, very distressed. And so I called her in and I asked her what's going on. And she said to me, this really shoddy story. She ran from home, all the way from her home to mine, quite a few kilometers away, just wearing what she was wearing, no money, no handbag, no nothing. And she told me that that morning her husband had beaten her up really badly. She walked out of the house and she stood on the opposite side and watched her front door till her husband left for work so she could come back in and she could dress up and go to work and check on her 3 kids. Well, when he left the house, she snuck back into the house. And within minutes, she heard him back in the house. So she crept under the bed, not wanting another confrontation. And the next thing was he was on the bed with the maid having sex. I'm sorry, guys. I'm telling you this story because this is absolutely shocking. But this is what happened. And she was so distraught. There was nothing she could do. She had to stay there. And she endured all this indignity of all of the story, in addition to having been beaten up. And so from there, to cut a long story short, she left the house. She left her kids, but she went and fought for her kids. And she went to work. Actually, she was the bigger breadwinner in the home. And she could have left her husband long before, but society was, you know, something that we paid attention to, what society would say and what, you know, what would the children say, what would the families say. But she took this bold step because she could take it no more. And so what I wanted to say is this is such a interesting story because she worked so hard, brought up the 3 kids, and she's doing well today. And I'm so proud of her because she believed it was possible. And along with this story, I had this opportunity in 86 and 87 to talk to the press and talk to the media. And there was no TV at the time, so it was newspaper and radio. And because of what happened to my friend, and another story which I'm not going to get into now, I decided I was going to start a center to help abused women. I spoke about it as much as I could to the media, that the necessity in Sri Lanka to start a center for abused women. And I said to them, I'm sorry, there's somebody on. If you can just mute yourself, please. So just to continue the story, I decided I was going to make a difference in women's lives, including my own and my friends. And I talked about this, and I had a call from this lady. She was a VSO, British VSO here, and her name was Jane Merivale. She said, if you are serious about doing this, I will help you. And to that was the beginning of Women in Need. That was the beginning of, you know, Professor Savitri Gunasekara. I have to mention these names because these ladies made it possible. So Professor Emeritus Savitri Gunasekara, Ranmali De Silva, the late Kamalini Vijay Telakar, she was a lawyer, Jane Merivale, We also had Indira Gonçalves Corrales. We had, I think it was Tahire Ilangakon at the time, and Anita Jayawardena, and Sheila Seniviratna. So it was these ladies who got together and pushed forward with Women in Need. And I went around talking to Lions groups, Rotarians. They were all male clubs about abuse. And it was not easy. It was not popular. It was so hard to do because, you know, people made jokes of me because I'm this tall, athletic person, you know. And but I was ready to take all of that because I thought women needed the support, women needed the help. And with this story, what I'm telling you, this story is the possibility, the endless possibility if women support each other. For instance, my friend had my support, her mother and her sister's support, so she was able to do what she did. And with the support of these ladies whose names I mentioned, we started Women in Need. So with that, on to Selvi today. Guys, this is going to be a really good show, so tighten your seat belts and sit back and enjoy this forum today. Selvi, over to you.
Carol, you need to unmute.
Selvi is an avid reader and researcher in Hindu spiritual thought, county coordinator for basic income. And she's going to talk about patriarchy and disempowerment of women. Of course, I said that she's going to talk about the feminist side of men and the male side of women. So, Selvi, over to you.
Story tells us how disempowered we are at the moment and how we can make it happen when there is a solidarity among women. It's a great story, Carol. Thank you. Now, empowerment of women has been at the center of the feminist movement over the last 100 years. The fact is, patriarchy is a scourge on this planet. It has systematically disempowered women over the last 2,000 or more years. According to Hindu thought, the theory of creation, according to the Vedas, expounded in the Samkhya philosophy, is that at the beginning, there was one. When the urge for creation arose, it divided itself into two, which constituted the masculine energy and the feminine cosmic energies. In Chinese tradition, they call it the yin and the yang. They are opposites coming together. In the tantric tradition, they call it the masculine energy as Shiva and the feminine energy as Shakti. Now, there are certain qualities which are attributed to masculine and feminine, as we all know, but this is not specifically man and woman. It's not gender. It is masculine and feminine. Now, masculine has assertive, dominant, strong, hard, giving tendencies, whereas the feminine has got intuitive, nurturing, caring, yielding, and receiving possibilities. But these polarities can be completely divorced from our construct of gender, and that we all contain in myriad, often dynamic combinations of both. So now everywhere in nature, animate or inanimate, we find expressions of masculinity and femininity. Sun and the moon, masculine, feminine. There are masculine and feminine trees and rocks. Michelangelo, the sculptor, always went looking for feminine rocks because the feminine rock marbles are more yielding for his sculptures. The economics and maths is masculine, whereas music and painting is feminine. In every sphere, patriarchy placed less value on the feminine principle. But why did they do that? Masculinity and femininity is not gender as we know it. Within man and woman, both sexes exist. Biologists say that we have estrogen and androgen sex hormones in all of us, but different proportions. These ideas resonate with Freud and Jung, who agree on the points of psychological bisexuality of human beings. We find in every individual or particle, you may have noticed it within yourself too, there's an urge to be united with something else or somebody else. The urge comes from within, as the individual is composed of opposites. And through the union, there is a resolution of the opposites. Until there is the union, there is tension, which sometimes may prove to be disastrous. This is where we are talking about the men's tensions. Patriarchy has devalued femininity, that every individual man or woman wants to give up femininity. You know, the female insecticides and all that. Infanticide, sorry, and strive for the masculine role. Now, prehistoric India has come to understand the concept of Ardhanarishwara. It aspires to resolve the paradox of opposites. The matching opposites produces the true rhythm of life. Ardhanarishwara is the half-man, half-woman Shiva that challenged patriarchy. Shiva actually challenged patriarchy by drawing his wife Parvati into himself by inclusion. When the femininity in man is crushed and denied or even killed, he is unable to fulfill the union of opposites within him. Like this, his father before him. So there is an intergenerational tensions within men. They don't understand why they've got that tension. And so they express themselves by consuming substances like liquor, drugs, cigarettes. There are anger flares, and most importantly, violence against women. When he suppresses and kills the feminine in him, he also does the same to the feminine outside. Our way to women's empowerment is deeply intertwined with the empowerment of the femininity of men. We cannot go along this road unless we take men along with us. We need to find ways and means of empowering man's feminine principle if we are going to be engaging with the empowerment of women. This is my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Selvi. Very thought-provoking. We go on to Soraya. Soraya works to empower women from Bangladesh, Nigeria, and Sri Lanka to ensure strong movement at grassroots level. Soraya is going to talk about creating a vision. Soraya.
Thank you, Carol. As we heard the story that Carol related, and then Sylvie bringing out so much of facts, we women, there's one thing we have to understand, and that is that the highway to power for women has very few entry points. One of the biggest roadblocks for us women is patriarchy. Patriarchy is not just a concept. It's not a thought, or it's not something that is happening elsewhere. It is pervasive in our world. It's institutionalized. Taking forward from what Sylvie said, look at our religions, the Abrahamic faiths. Women are practically told what to think, not how to think. So this saga of disempowerment of women is deep rooted. So in order for us, Helen Keller, the blind activist, she once said, the worst thing about being blind, what is worse more than being blind is having sight and having no vision. So what is critically important, I believe, listening to what Carol said about this woman who was, not only was she beaten, she was abused, she was blamed and shamed. And on top of it all, here was this man who was denying his femininity because he was oppressing her femininity. So in order for us to really build some power and shine, the question we have to ask is, what is that I want the world to know because I lived? Because I lived. So there must be many roads to this. I'm not going to stay here and preach to you about the highway or my way, but here's what I assert. We need to have a clear vision. We need to have a clear vision about who we are and what we plan to do. In order that we can build power and achieve what we are here to achieve. So how can you know what your vision is? You got to certainly know what your values are. Without values, you can't build on your vision. So these can be long drawn out exercises. But today, I really call upon you to ask yourself, am I going to be an iPhone or am I going to be just a Samsung? Why am I here? My mentor said the richest place on earth is the graveyard, because there lies, particularly women, with incredible gifts, talents, abilities, without having put them to use. So the call today is create a vision. Create a vision. Look, you don't need to go far. Look around in your community, in your village, in your city, in your country. We need you. We need you. So I beg of you, as we go along, let's focus on a vision for you, and then work towards achieving that vision. Thank you.
Thanks, Soraya. We have Fazana, who's a behavior specialist. Fazana will share some insights of her personal life-defining experiences, so she can reach out to those in similar circumstances. The reason why we are telling some of these stories is, people know that we've all been in these same places, and we all need to support each other to get over these. It is possible, and just have to believe. Fazana.
Thank you, Carol. So today I thought I must make this really relevant and practical to our audiences. And when we say empower women, believe in it, how does a woman out there who's listening to me find the energy to be empowered and to believe in herself? If you take my life, maybe around 15 years ago, when I was very happily married, had everything that any woman would dream of, a beautiful house, a great job, and a company of our own. And then God blessed us with twins, a girl and a boy. I thought my life was perfect. And then within a year, it all crashed, and my partner, my husband, wanted to move on. And I was left with no job, no money, no house, and no husband, just my 2-year-old twins. Because I had quit a good corporate job to be a full-time mother for a short time until the kids get into school. So now today I meet a lot of women who go through such issues. And that's why as Carol rightly said, I want to make this session, my session, very relevant and real to all of you. We women go through many issues in our lives. One would be similar to what I explained, a relationship, but that also had financial issues. Sometimes you may have health issues. So in today's COVID-19 situation, I think a lot of women are going through this. Insecurity of jobs, finances, maybe their husbands losing their job, losing their temper at home, the stress of how to make ends meet. So how do we women stand up to this and be empowered? How are you going to deal with this? So I don't want to give you all the details of my personal life, but that insight was to say that and share with you how I am here today, being strong and grouping with a strong bunch of women, 5 other women, to help other women to become something somewhat stronger and an individual of themselves. So in this, I want to share a story of the 90-10 rule. I don't know how many of you know that. 10% of life is what you can't control, and 90% you can control. Imagine, we always say it's our destiny, oh, we had no control. That is not true. It is how you react to a situation, which is so important. What were my choices? I could have gone into depression. I could have committed suicide. These are such common problems today. Even in our last week's talk, I think Kamani touched on suicide rates in this country for kids. So this is, so you end up having many choices, and then you decide what is the choice you're going to make. And that's the choice which will give you the rest of your life's solutions. So if you take that 10%, which becomes the problem, and you react worse, the entire 100% becomes the problem. So there's a very popular example for this, how a family is having breakfast and the little daughter spills the coffee on the father's shirt. He screams and yells and makes a big drama, gets late to school, there's traffic, the kid is upset, and in the night the whole family is really upset. How could this have been done differently? He could have just said, oh fine, I have another shirt, worn it and gone. So it's 10% is the problem, the other 90% is how you create it. So I want all you women out there to find that strength, because women are far more resilient than men. A lot of research has shown that. There's many studies that show, especially in pandemics, even in slavery, even in, all kinds of life-changing moments, it's the women who rise. Women are definitely stronger than men. And you can find that answer by deciding how you're going to react to a problem you're faced with today. Don't moan. Just find an answer, think deep down and say, I'm going to do it, and rise up, and you can do it. I did it, and I know everyone else can. Thank you.
You know, while Farzana was talking, I was just thinking to myself, you know, my mom was such a strong role model, and we had she brought up 9 children and worked a job. One of the things she used to say is take time for yourself, because if you look after number 1, you can look after number 2, 3, and 4. And I think we women always put ourselves at the bottom of the rung, and we don't take care of ourselves in many ways. So because we are always catering to what our husbands or children or, you know, somebody else wants. And so I'd like the viewers to know, you know, if you take care of yourself mentally and physically both, then you can always take care of everybody else. You can deal with situations that arise and diffuse situations when you can, as Farzana said. Kamini. So Kamini is going to be talking, Kamini works on social justice and women's issues. And Kamini is going to talk on the importance of role models and male allies for women's empowerment, and a personal reflection, Kamini.
Thanks so much, Carol. So like Farzana, I also felt that I should also reflect on some of the key factors I feel that has helped me move forward and maybe be presented as an empowered woman. For me, I think my key step was, I think as a child, I was born in England. So when I moved to Sri Lanka as a child, we were anyway quite independent. But I think my family circumstances pushed my sister and I both to actually be quite strong and move forward, because a lot of people don't see the difficult parts of our lives. And I think it's also important for it to be shown. And in this process, for example, in my childhood, my father played a very important role in my life's journey, because my mother, she had bipolar disorder, and she suffered from postnatal depression, which meant that there was a lot of violence and abuse in my home. And my father was someone who played the role of my mother, pretty much. And he was so compassionate, he was so warm, and he was so childlike as well, and really helped me always be connected with my heart. And he died when I was 14. It was the biggest loss ever for me. But also at the same time, I was also very much, I had a kind of a understanding of Buddhism, as you can at the age of 14, and I was into meditation. But what happened was that his life had also been full of hardship. And I always remembered him, and it was as though he was like there telling me, he was like my conscience, he was like my voice, always telling me, you know, I would subconsciously ask Dad, is this okay, should I do this? And he became such an important role model throughout my life into late adulthood. And it became interesting because when I went to Johns Hopkins Public Health School for my master's, my advisor was a person who studied adolescent health. And he wanted to study the aspect of children who had overcome adversity to do well in their lives. And he expanded on the concept of resilience. Farzana spoke of this. What is resilience? And he found that for most of these children, there was a mentor, there was someone who really believed in them, like as though they were on their shoulder telling them what to do or how to be better. And I think in this case also my father played, he was that happened in me. And that's why mentoring is so important. Another really important life choice was when I joined the Family Planning Association of Sri Lanka. I was a law student. I joined as a youth member, and here I was suddenly talking about sexual reproductive health. I was traveling all over the country, all over the world, representing Sri Lanka at various forums, meeting amazing people. And it was such a huge exposure to everything. And FPAs globally, women play a huge role. So I was always seeing women, and even when I went to the rural areas as a young person, that's when I realized I want to focus on women and youth one day in my life. And something that was so important was that in the Family Planning Association, in the auditorium, they have pictures of the people who started FPA. And I would look at those pictures, most of them were women, amazing women. Sylvia Fernando, Siva Chinnatambi, Dr. Mary Ratnam, amazing women. They were so ahead of their time, and they did what they felt was right and needed, despite the rest of Sri Lanka not really understanding why they needed it. And for me, I was so enthused and energized by that. And I think it's so important to have role models. And I also wanted to say that, you know, as I've had many male figures also really supporting me in my journey. Not only as father figures, I've been very lucky, many people have helped me in my journey. But when I've had ideas, you know, I've always kept to that thing of wanting to do what I felt was right. Sometimes it may seem crazy, and actually a lot of men, especially in the field of gender-based violence, working in corporates, have really pushed me forward and encouraged me to network or help with funding or given me strategic guidance. So I wanted to just talk about how resilience, mentorship, and having role models have been really important things in my life, in my journey. That's it. That's what I'm going to share for now.
Okay, so, you know, quite often it's very hard to do this by ourselves. We do need the men also to participate in the life's journeys, as we call it. So, you know, somewhere down the line, I mean, it's nice to hear from Kamini about her dad. And, you know, obviously he had this kinder and gentler side to him. So, again, it shows, you know, this feminine and male side that Selvi was talking about earlier. Kyra. So Kyra works to promote social justice. She's a mindfulness and well-being teacher. She wants to talk about her level of experiences of mutual respect and gender equity and women's empowerment as a Buddhist nun in the Plum Village community of Thich Nhat Hanh. Yeah, it's hard to pronounce that one. So, you know, I don't know whether many other viewers knew that, but Kyra used to be a Buddhist nun, and I spent quite a lot of time meditating. So this is interesting, seeing a different aspect of how she has dealt with situations.
Thank you, Carol. And following up on Kamini's beautiful sharing about the need for mentors, I want to begin by reading a poem from one of the early nuns. This is from the Therigatha. You know, there's the two special texts of awakening poems from the early monks, and then there's also one from the early nuns who became enlightened. So this is a newer translation, and it's from a book called The First Free Women, and this is just one awakening poem, and it's called Mitta, which is friend. Full of trust, you left home and soon learned to walk the path, making yourself a friend to everyone and making everyone a friend. When the whole world is your friend, fear will find no place to call home. And when you make the mind your friend, you'll know what trust really means. Listen. I have followed this path of friendship to its end, and I can say with absolute certainty, it will lead you home. So I was a Buddhist nun for 15 years in the Plum Village community of the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, Vietnamese Zen tradition. So I was a bhikshuni, fully ordained for 12 of those 15 years. I was a novice for 3 years. And what I found very empowering in that experience and still now as I look back on it, was there was a profound commitment to empowering women in our Buddhist community. I understand that in Sri Lanka, we most people practice in the Theravadan Buddhist lineage, and in the Sri Lankan history of Buddhism, the lineage of bhikshunis died out, and so there's differing views about this in the Theravadan world, but in many places, women are not given full ordination, and they're not treated in an equal way, in an inclusive way by the general, sangha of monks. And in the Mahayana traditions of Buddhism, the bhikshuni lineage was able to stay alive. And what I really appreciate about my teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, is that he would ordain women nuns from other traditions, like the Tibetan tradition, which also was not allowing women's full ordination, or women from the Theravadan tradition, and transmit the pratimoksha to make them fully ordained bhikshunis. And his view was very much that to be healthy as a community, both monks and nuns needed to be full of mutual respect for each other and full of self-determination, the ability to make our own decisions and to be equal, to see ourselves as equally contributing members. So he did everything as a teacher to really encourage and inspire and promote the nuns to be in leadership positions as much as the monks. In fact, our community was 2/3 female and 1/3 male, which you'll often see in most spiritual communities. Most of the people coming are women, and yet often you see the leadership is male. And so our community really practiced to have women teaching alongside men, so nuns teaching alongside monks, lay women teaching alongside laymen. And whenever we'd lead retreats or go out to offer retreats in the public, we would really look at that and make sure if there were 2 monks that were giving talks, we would try to find 2 nuns so that it would be balanced. And I can tell you, as a nun and now as a lay Dharma teacher, women have told me over and over again how important it is to see a woman in a leadership position in a spiritual practice, to see themselves reflected. When you're a woman practicing and you only see men sharing how to practice, it's very disempowering, because something in you sees that and thinks, oh, I can never be like that because I'm not a man. Just like in the United States, if for African Americans, if you only see a white president and you never see someone that looks like you, then you might think this will never happen. I can't do this. When as soon as you have a Black president, your sense of empowerment goes way up. So it's similar in gender and many other identities. We need to see ourselves reflected in leadership. So women have told me this many, many times, just how important it is for them to see a woman teaching the Dharma, offering retreats, being a strong leadership presence. So, my wish and my what I want to add to this conversation that I feel is so important on the need to undo patriarchy is that it has to happen in all of our institutions. And it is not, to me, it's not real spirituality if it doesn't take on the injustices. We can perpetuate oppression in our religious and spiritual institutions. And if we don't see that, we're part of the problem. We're actually making it harder for future generations to realize the path that we're teaching. The more we oppress women, the more we don't allow women to be full contributors to the community of practice, everyone loses out when that happens. Sylvie said it so beautifully. Everyone's capacity for the beauty of the feminine, the receptivity, the creativity, the intuition, all of that is dampened in every single one of us. So I just am so grateful for this conversation that we're having. Thank you.
Yeah, so, you know, in the recent past, we've had ministers for women's affairs. It was a monk. It was men. And, you know, I mean, it just absolutely dumbfounded as to how anyone could think you could address women's issues by appointing either a monk or a man in charge of women's affairs. So, I mean, as simple as something as simple as that, right? So these things have to change. And for Sri Lanka, I mean, we are more than 50% women. If you take scholastic results, the better results are females. So, you know, then we have mostly men in parliament. And then you think, what happened to all these intelligent girls and women who have passed out, yet it's somebody who doesn't even have the same education level who's actually making the decisions for the rest of the country. So this goes so much deeper because women do not participate quite often, because women do not believe that they are capable of participating. I'm not even saying go into politics, but I'm saying have your voice heard, you know, come out and stand for what you believe in, and believe, most importantly, that you are capable. And I'm going to start an open floor now. And I'll ask this question from Selvi, but everybody's welcome to step in and, you know, cross discuss. Selvi, what can be done to strengthen and enhance the feminine principle in men, of the feminine side of men? What can be done, and where have the men failed to address this? And how, by addressing the feminine side, can they support and understand where women come from, and vice versa?
Thank you, Carol. This is a long-standing issue that we are sort of battling with, struggling with, to find answers to. I don't profess I know all the answers, but I can tell you for one thing, if we do identify the problem as the loss or the killing or the destruction of femininity in men, and as a result, he is imposing the same death to the women outside who are more feminine than he is. In other words, killing femininity becomes the order of the day, whether it is in him or whether it is outside. This is killing femininity, I'm saying, in a not a practical way, but even the killing takes place. Now, the way in which we have to tackle this is for the men from the very beginning to have an identity which is not male. I'm not a man, I'm a human being. See, this is a very important step in making men become more feminine, more responsible to the society, to the women, and to the problems around him. See, the moment you start thinking, I'm a man, I have to be like this, and the whole thing gets decided and defined by that role. Like Sadhguru says, Sadhguru is a holy man, he says that the genitals do not count anywhere else except in bathrooms and bedrooms. So outside bathrooms and bedrooms, one must feel I'm human, not a man, not a woman, not a monk, not a this, not that, but, you know, not a CEO, not a manager, you know, not a whatever. I am just human. You see, that brings humility to his attitude. So this identity is a very important thing. He should identify himself as a person in society with responsibilities. And the second thing is the role of mothers and sisters are crucially important. I think, Carol, you've made this point several times. When the mothers are bringing up their sons, you know, he is not to be served by the sisters and the mothers. He has to be an equal contributing member of the family. His plates should not be washed by the younger sisters.
So Selvi, there's a question from one of our viewers, Tilak, and Tilak says, what if we have grades, from grade 1, have mixed gender classes? Would that help? So,
well, that will help to some extent. But the main thing is your mind construct about yourself as a man is very important. We need to change that. Because once you start a mind construct about your being a man, then you have to live up to it, and that creates all the problems. And in this, the roles of mothers and sisters play a very important role. Mothers have to bring up their sons, in a way that they are actually, their femininity is nurtured within themselves. See, when I heard about the Delhi rape, which was a horrendous rape, the first thing I thought was, what kind of a mother did bring up this man? He's not just inhuman. He's an animal, So how do mothers bring up such men and sisters make such men? So we have to really look at women to see that they strengthen the femininity in their sons and their brothers. The other thing is the expectations of society. Why can't a man cook in the house when the woman goes out to work? Why can't a man look after the baby and change the nappies while the woman is studying for her exams? You see, those kind of expectations in society also has to be changed. They have to be transformed so that men are comfortable in doing which are called feminine jobs.
So Selvi, you bring up a very, very vital point. I am a woman, a Muslim woman, who's worked deeply for over a decade in dismantling patriarchy. In my community, women are told what they can't do. You walk into a mosque, you can't even walk into a mosque. If you do, you have to use a side entrance. And what you said, Selvi, is very critical for all our listeners. So when we want to dismantle patriarchy, it is critical for us to enhance the femininity in the man, not pointing fingers. What is critical here? This is a huge sentence, a huge message you have delivered, Selvi. Let us enhance the femininity in the man so that women and men together can thrive. So last month I was in conversation with Jazima Ismail, Mrs. Jazima Ismail, you know her. She is an activist with over 50 years of working on the ground with people. And I asked her, where have we failed, the women's movements? And she said to me something really profound. She said, we have forgotten who we are. We have forgotten we are feminine. So it is a well said sentence, but why did we forget? We forget we are feminine because our femininity is constantly being crushed,
suppressed.
So in that crushing, we lose our femininity and we begin to fight for our rights. But if we can reach out to men and say, hey, listen, the tantric knowledge that you shared is 5,000 years old.
Yes.
Look here, men, you have this femininity. Escalate that, bring that up so that together we can walk towards this path where there's light.
I can share something on this as well. Nowadays in the villages you find, I don't know how many of you have heard of mother support groups, where when children, have mothers have babies, you have others to support them. So when you have workshops or anything done by the Ministry of Health, you have mother support groups coming in. Now there are men also. Kamini, I'm sure you've heard of this. You bring the men to come and look after the babies while the mothers are following a program, not very long, about 2 or 3 hours maybe on maybe complementary feeding or immunization or something like that in the rural areas. So as a behavior change specialist, these are some of the areas I've also worked on, trying to change the men to move in, and only when they do it that you feel the pain, you feel the experience and understand what a woman also goes through, right? So it is happening, but not in a large scale.
Not
But
in
you
a
know,
large
Yeah, and I'd like to
gems,
share.
yeah.
I'd also like to share my experiences because my work has primarily been working with men and boys to change for gender equality. So I've been involved with a lot of workshops, a lot of men who have been trying to change the conversation, and for them, I mean, one key aspect is about creating a space for men to reflect on their power and privilege that they have. It's crucial. I've seen men as allies actually reinforcing the power and privilege that we're trying to break through. And amongst the men who have been doing this work, this process of self-reflection and standing up, and being more comfortable with their feminine side, they face a lot of stigma in their communities. I can actually share a video that we did some time ago on this. And what we realize is what men need in that way, if you want to keep this process going, keeping men engaged, as much as creating the space for reflection, you also need to create that support group, that support network for men to lean on each other so that they meet like-minded men, like we need to meet, we are enthused by like-minded women. And there's a lot more that goes in, but these are some of the key factors from a very programming perspective that we try to bring this change in from.
So Kamini, you know, I mean, you've been talking about this. My point is that why is it that we, you know, we almost come out as if we women are fighting for our rights. It's not even what it should be, right? It should be the norm. And people looking from outside probably say, oh, these women are so strong and, you know, they fight for everything and they fight for their rights. It's not that. I mean, our strength comes from our experiences. And our strength comes from our belief that it's possible for us to do whatever we want to do. That doesn't mean to say it's taken away the feminine side of us. You know, it's enhanced by the masculine side of us so that we play a stronger role out there. And Kyra, you were saying something. Can you continue, please?
Sure. Well, I think, you know, to be a whole human being, as Selvi was saying so beautifully, is to embrace all of these parts of ourselves, and all women have the strength, the power that we might even be afraid of because we haven't been socialized to take that power and to believe in it and to feel comfortable using it. But, you know, that can be done in a way that isn't power over, which has often been the masculine, patriarchal, hierarchical style of understanding power. But what's so beautiful, what femininity can bring to that sense of power is power with, that I'm stronger when I work with other people in collaboration and not oppressing anyone, but actually this is a very beautiful understanding of leadership, is where you call out the best of everyone that you're leading. And in fact, that's how my teacher Thich Nhat Hanh would talk about what the role of an abbot or abbess was as the leader of the monastic community. It was to help find out and bring out the qualities of every other person in the group. So that's a very, a more feminine understanding of leadership, is actually to listen to and water what's good in everyone, rather than this sense of I have power over everyone else.
But you know, Kyra, Fazana was talking earlier about these issues where it's sometimes women who felt that if a woman is abused, it was because of her attire and behavior. And, you know, then there was less men who thought that way than women did. And so the mindset of the women need to change. I mean, we have two guys on this show who are watching, Fazli, and he says we need to endeavor to educate both men and women to get out of this religio-cultural trap. And Tilak says sexual objectification stems from the way humanity is nurtured to think and believe, and how parents and even especially the mother calls their son the Raktaram Puta. You know, you have to get away from this nonsensical idea.
What does that mean? Can you tell us
That
what
means
that means
the
for me?
golden
My
sun.
golden son.
So if you have a male figure, they call him the golden sun. So these two guys, Fazli and Tilak, have talked about this. So I'm really happy that somebody has actually come in and mentioned some of these things that we women talk about. Soraya?
Yes, critically important. I want to respond to Fazli. I'm sure what needs to happen is we need the men to support us. Even when the Me Too movement started, I was an advocate for, we don't need a movement, we need a moment. We need to take into account the whole issue that is evolving. Putting down somebody is not going to make us better. It is so with our activism, with the relationships we maintain with the opposite sex. We have to come together, and then the synergy is very critical for us to be successful. So referring to Fazli, there are many men who say we have to do this, but what I call on the men to do is, please take one simple step today. Especially what comes to my mind is in the mosques, the way women are treated. This is a horrendous injustice for Muslim women. Our voices are not heard in the most, we go to have the most highest spiritual experience in a mosque, and we are told that our voices don't matter. So if together men have to come up and stand with us and say, no, their voice matters. So this is the little action that we have to take very mindfully on a daily basis for change to happen.
I'd like to come in on this because this is a very important question Soraya has raised. See, the main point is that when women are subjected to oppression and subjugation by the patriarchal men in the society, women usually tend to think of themselves as the victims. See, the victim mentality, but it puts them down even further so that they can be exploited further. They have to know that they have responsibility for making that reality happen. And when they know that what is it that they are doing so that this is happening, that then they can change it. You see, the reality that's happened, whether in the mosque or in anywhere else, or the temple, or even in workplaces, when women are put down, right, there is something that the women are doing. There's a responsibility that the women have. When they know what they are doing in order to let that happen, then they can correct it. The second thing is that when women are in a position to change their situation, they will find the ways and means of doing it. Like you've seen that in the story that Carol was saying, for a long time she was putting up with it, but when the situation happened, she was able to move out and change it. So why can't we do that much earlier? You see? Yeah.
I mean, if I was also to add, I think there's a whole issue of impunity and lack of accountability. The CARE study that Farzana was referring to talks about is primarily a study from men's views of their perpetration of violence against women. And out of the men who had perpetrated rape, only 2% faced any legal consequences. And how many women can also come forward and hold people accountable, hold men accountable? I mean, there are many issues also that surround this, but I mean, women, I mean, there are many multiple ways that we try to push for equality. And one thing is, we know how terrible GBV is to push women back from moving forward. And some of us also push for better responses. But I think there's also, we have legislation in Sri Lanka, very strong legislation against domestic violence and violence against women. And I think women also really need to step up and start complaining, going to the police, you know, and holding the police accountable. Because I think there's so many facets to it until the society can become, and men can also create this, come to this space of equality and being in touch with the feminine side, and, you know, all of this equality comes in. There are also a lot of steps that need to be taken.
And I would just add that I think to Fazli's comment, equality is not necessarily the ultimate goal. I agree that it's not about, you know, I like the understanding of equity better, which is, you know, whatever is your need, you have access to that. So some people have a need for more economic support. Some people have a need for more educational support. We all come to the game with the different privileges, with different strengths, with different things that have been nourished in us. So it's not that all women need to have, you know, to try to be like men. I think that's already been said here tonight, but it's that equity gives a broader sense of, if you have this strength already, what would support you to develop that even more? What would support you to be fully confident in your ability to be empowered and to share what you bring to the world? That might look different for women, for girls, than for, you know, boys and men in society. So it's not that everyone gets the same, but it's like in the Benedictine Saint Benedict's rule for abbots, how they should treat monks, is it wasn't like give everyone the same thing. If this monk is ill, this monk needs medicine. You don't need to give that medicine to every single monk. If this monk, you know, is really lonely, then you need to provide some kind of support and care that doesn't, it's not about everyone getting the same. So I think that notion of equity versus equality can also be helpful.
You know, one important thing which I would like to mention at the end is that we have been, the feminist movement has been alienating men for a long time, you know, and it was actually a fight against men. It was a fight. But lately, we understand it is not productive to go in that direction. We have to take the men along with us. We have to know what we need to do or how to do to bring out their femininity where they're comfortable with their femininity. And they're able to cope with the feminine side, which is outside them, which is the woman, right? So finally, we said we need to not fight with them. We have to take them along with us. They should be our
Sylvia.
companions.
Totally agree with you there. Unfortunately, guys, this has been a really good show and we are running out of time. We must have that call to action from Soraya because everybody watching has to figure out what they can do today, starting today, to make a change. So Soraya, hand over to you for a minute before I close down.
Thank you. So Muhammad Ali said, service is the rent we pay for living on this earth. If you look around, there are incredible opportunities to serve every day, everywhere. So I want to believe, again, going back to this, create a vision, understand what your values are, and take small steps. We don't have to do everything, but we are not free from starting what we need to do. So I want to leave you with 6 words. Remember these 6 words. It is necessary. It's necessary that you do something. This whole movement is about building national unity, creating a movement of women who will engage in that vision. So it's necessary. Look at around you. There's so much brokenness. You need to address these issues. Then it's possible. It's possible. When Mother Teresa went to India, she's an Albanian, to care for the unloved, she was stoned. She was ridiculed. And she was told to go back. But she had that vision. She didn't give up. So if she could do it, we could do it. And finally, it's you. So it's necessary, it's possible, it's you. Nobody is going to start your movement. I would never have done Women in Need. That was Carol's job. She builds homes. I cannot do that. But talk about empowering women. Talk about bringing faith communities together. I will be up at 3 a.m. not being able to sleep, planning. So our invitation to you is, if you can't crawl, walk. If you can't walk, run. If you can't run, fly. But for goodness sake, don't stay still. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, life is too short. We have to make the best of it. I mean, when you're gone, I mean, what a wasted life if you haven't done something and been the best you can be. So with that, I want to tell the viewers, please Inbox us. We are on Facebook. We are on podcast. We are on, this recorded show is going to be on our Facebook page, Wisdom Wednesdays. And you can ask any question of us, or so that we can address it in the future or send you a response. Please join us next week. It's on the 13th at 6 p.m. Wisdom Wednesdays, and we would be talking about why Sri Lanka needs to heal and how women can lead the way, how we can be part of this healing that needs to happen in this country. So on behalf of the panel, I want to tell you, thank you so much for joining us. Please join us next week on the 13th. And in the meantime, do what you can to be the best you can be and believe that it's possible. Goodbye.